Okay, welcome to class, everybody. First thing I'm going to do is share my screen as usual and update everybody as to where we are. Sorry, hang on one second. Didn't quite hear that. Oh, maybe it was somebody just. Okay. All right, so here we are. It's January 24th. And there's just to show you, there's no class tomorrow, but we do have a class on Thursday. And I changed things around a little bit here. So on Thursday, that's when we're going to be visited by the librarian, and the librarian will take us through the library and give us some advice about research. So if you have questions about using the library, that's a really good time to ask them. And next week, no class, Monday, I moved the due date, the starting date rather, for the third essay. I moved the starting date back to January 31st, which means that everybody has all of this week to complete essay number 2, first draft, and then send it to me, and then have me revise and edit and suggest, and then for you to send in your second draft. So I'm changing these due dates here for essay number 3, moving them down here. Probably, let me check that February 2nd date. Because I know it's very tight for everybody. Not everybody has been able to send in the first draft of the essay, and I figured we can move the dates around a little bit and give you a little bit more time. Yeah, that'll have to stand though, because our backs are going to be up against the end of the term real soon after that. So many of you have not yet given me the first draft of the second essay. And even though I had originally said it was due today, so I'm pushing that date back, giving you here, you can give it to me by Thursday. That'll give you 2 more days to do that. Let's move this. Let's move this. And then let's put the due date right here. Okay. So I'm hoping that takes some pressure off of everybody in terms of when the essays are due, because I don't have them already. I know you're working on them. What I thought we'd do today, therefore, is hear from you about what you're thinking about or what you started to write about in your essay number 2, since I don't have the essays. So I'm going to ask each of you, think for a moment about the essay number 2 that you're planning to write or you started to write, and maybe you can share with the rest of the class, for example, which amendments that you're thinking about writing about. Thank you, Antonia. I'll be happy to take your essay. Yes, anybody who can send in an essay sooner, it's fine. I really only received 2 essays so far from the group for essay number 2. So as you get your drafts ready, send them in. That's great. So can I ask you that? Can I ask you to share with us what amendments you might be including, 1, 2, or 3, you might be including in your essay number 2?
Yeah.
Go. Can you start for us then? Thank you. What are you thinking about, Chang?
I think it's okay.
Say that again.
I think it's okay. I have no, I have no any opinion about this.
Oh, nothing in mind yet. And I understand that. Okay. So don't feel that you have to say something if you haven't thought about it. You better get thinking about it. But I thought maybe if we heard from others about what they were writing about. Go ahead, Syra.
Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, I already I finished introduction and first body. So I choose the First Amendment, and I took inside freedom of speech, freedom of press, and I'm thinking about the third one. I think I'm gonna take freedom of assembly, something like that,
Okay, that's excellent. And as
or religion. I'm not
freedom of
sure
religion,
yet. Yeah.
yes. And
It
as everybody,
depends on what kind of idea I'm gonna write for my example. So, and I have a question. So for second body, freedom of press, it's about journalism, right? About like a media, about like how it's affecting. And I was thinking about to write about propaganda,
very good, very good.
and thinking about a book. I don't know if it's gonna be can we use a book too, like an
Definitely,
example. So
definitely.
yeah, I'm thinking about to write about George Orwell, 1940
1984.
84.
Yes,
Yeah, that it was like about all propaganda, like today we have a war with that country, tomorrow we have a second one, and people like don't have their own opinion and something like that. Like, but I haven't finished yet. Like, I didn't pull myself together yet. Like my
yes,
thought.
that's excellent, excellent ideas.
Mhm.
And so I just want to sort of reflect on that for everybody else who's thinking about it. So, and so I'll sort of repeat back for you what you were saying. So you're going to focus on the First Amendment, and you're
Mhm.
going to choose three different parts of the First Amendment, and use those as the body paragraphs, which is
Mhm.
great. Anybody can do that. You can use the First Amendment and pieces of that, or you can use different amendments and pieces from the different amendments. And this idea you have about freedom of the press in terms of propaganda, people might not know the term propaganda, but that's when the government or the state, or actually anybody, is trying to convince everybody else about their own point of view, and they slant everything that the news and everything that they report about that. Some people think about advertisements like that. They're not strictly political propaganda, but one of the things that advertisements do is they try to get you to try a certain product by thinking, and one of the ways they do that is by trying to influence the way you think about whatever it is that their product is related to. Anyway, so that's a great plan, Sarah. Thank you. Who else? Who else is thinking about or has thought about what they might want to write about? Oh, well, just ask people then. How about Chris?
I haven't given it a chance yet to think about it. I honestly don't know.
Okay, so that's why we're doing this little exercise today. I realize that the time is really compressed, and but you all need to do this. And don't forget, let me just give you a little glance to the future. The third essay is going to be about human rights, which are far broader than the civil rights that we're dealing with now in the 10 Amendments. And then the final essay will allow you to use any of the information that you've gathered in the first three essays and put them together in a different way for the final essay. So it's really important for all of you to do the thinking now for your essay number 2 and of course essay number 3, so that you can put that final essay together without struggling much, because the end of the term comes really quickly. I just pushed back the dates because I see that everybody's having a little trouble putting things together, but you really need to do it. So please don't hold back. Okay, how about Chang? Do you want to try to share now?
Um, to share my idea or what?
Yes, to share your ideas for the second essay.
For my second essay, I mainly choose some text in the Bill of Rights, which I am interested in, and I think they're important. So I said I remember that I chose the first one, the third one, and the last I don't remember, but I think they are important. And then I explained the situation in my own words, and I use the citation from the Bill of Rights, and I explained why they are important. And at the last conclusion, I repeated my idea once again in different words, and then I finished my essay.
Okay, so yes, I heard it, that the First Amendment and the Third Amendment. I didn't quite hear the others, but I also heard that you're going to take some ideas you have about what's been happening to you or your experience and incorporate those in there. And that's good. That's a fine way to do it. Yeah, somebody's saying fix your mic because your mic was really hard to hear everything that you were saying, but that's okay. We'll just move along a little bit. Is there someone else maybe who wants to volunteer about what they might be writing about? How about Antonia? Any ideas? Antonia? Maybe not.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, I haven't really thought of what I'm gonna write. I'm gonna look over everything tonight.
Okay, so thank you for saying that. Okay, so it does seem as if everybody's having a little difficulty thinking about what to write. So why don't we together look at one essay that's been submitted, and maybe that'll help you get an understanding of what we're really looking for. So let me find that now. Hang on one second, and I'll share that essay, and we'll go through it, and maybe then people will have a better understanding of what to do. So here we have one right here. Let me share the screen. Here we go. Okay, so here we have an essay. Now, there's not going to be a lot of corrections here, because this is a well-written essay, but I do want you to read it with you just so you get an idea about how another student in 10 approached this, okay? So here we go. After the declaration, and here, there's a lot of connections made with the first essay we wrote. You can see, after the Declaration of Independence was released in 1776, America as a new country was created. Having suffered from the oppression of British colonial rule for a long time, the founding fathers decided to create a different kind of country from the monarchy, namely a democratic and free country. Thus, the U.S. Constitution uses the doctrine of separation of powers as the foundation. Well, let me just fix this because I see this "the" was repeated there. Thus, the U.S. Constitution uses the doctrine of separation of powers as the foundation by the French philosopher and lawyer Charles Louis de Secondat and Baron de Montesquieu. So here, these two French philosophers were people who thought about structure of government before the American government was founded. And this student has found information about them by doing some research and has included them here in her essay, which is just great. You don't have to go quite as far as this. This is excellent research and an excellent way to incorporate the research into the essay. And obviously, the more interest you have, independent interest you have in these kinds of things, the more motivated you'll be to do those kind of things. But this is absolutely correct. And these two philosophers, these two French philosophers, oh, no, actually, it's one philosopher. Montesquieu, we often just refer to him as Montesquieu. This is his royal title, so it's very long. He did think about this idea of separation of powers. Remember, we talked about how the United States government had the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch, and that's the separation of powers that was talked about. Among these are the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, also known as the Bill of Rights, which are the cornerstones of the U.S. Constitution. The significance of the Bill of Rights is to replace government power with legal power and to maximize the protection of citizens' rights. Absolutely correct. The whole idea behind the Bill of Rights is to limit the government power, and in this, it said very well here, to limit it and to make it obey the law. Remember, liberty is the freedom we enjoy, and liberty means freedom under the law. We just wrote about that in the last essay. So it's an excellent way to express that thought. First, the First Amendment protects civil rights by limiting the legislative power of Congress. Remember, it starts out, Congress shall make no law, reflecting concerns at the time that the federal Congress was expanding its power and pressing the rights of the people in the states. To the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of religion or prohibiting the exercise thereof. In this part, it's clear that the law respects and protects the people's freedom of religion. So this is how she got freedom of religion in there. However, not all religious beliefs are protected by the First Amendment. Aha. So even though she puts forth the notion of freedom of religion, showing an exception here. For example, the Mormons claim that freedom of religion and the law of the Mormon allow polygamy. Polygamy is when one man can marry several women, can have many wives. However, the government arrested many Mormons in 1879 on charges of bigamy. Bigamy is the word for someone who has not one wife, a man who has not one wife, but two wives. And of course, the Mormons often had several wives. And you'll notice this is 100 years after the Constitution was written. The Constitution was written in well, almost 100 years, in 1789, and here 90 years later, the freedom of religion is not being extended to the Mormons. The reason was that the individual freedom of belief was not above the law, and polygamy violated good order and peace. Of course, that's the reason that the government gave. But here you have a perfect example of how anybody can deal with any of the amendments, any of the freedoms, any of the civil rights, whether it's right to privacy or freedom of speech or freedom of assembly, anything, how one can deal with that. First, you state what the freedom is, right there, protects people's freedom of religion, and then you give an example either that confirms the freedom that's being put forth or shows a contradiction involved with that. In this case, it's a contradiction. It's not that people can freely exercise anything that their religion says. The laws that were passed against having more than one wife superseded, overruled the religious freedom of the Mormons. So that's an example of how you can handle a particular freedom. Now let's go on. Next, the right of people to own guns comes from the Second Amendment. So here, the first paragraph was focused on the First Amendment, and now the second paragraph is focused on the Second Amendment. First paragraph focused on religious freedom in the First Amendment, and didn't deal with the other civil rights that are listed in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, just focused on freedom of religion. And now in the next one, the essay is going to focus on the Second Amendment. Next, the right of the people to own guns comes from the Second Amendment. In the Second Amendment, and there's the statement of the Second Amendment, the advantage of the Second Amendment is that it prevents the government from having much power and thus oppress people. Well, it doesn't, so prevents it from oppressing people. When an evil government is created, people who own guns can overthrow it. This is the reason Americans legally own guns in the United States. You can agree with this idea, you can disagree with this idea, but it's absolutely a perfectly legitimate way of expressing the concept of the Second Amendment. It's one of the things that was on the minds, of the Founding Fathers when they put that Second Amendment in there. And you'll notice the First Amendment has 5 or 6 different civil rights all clustered together in the First Amendment. Maybe because the Founding Fathers thought they were the most important and didn't want to put any of them really didn't want to stretch them out and give each one a separate amendment, but lumped them all together. But here we have the Second Amendment, and that one stands just for gun ownership all by itself. So how important did the founding fathers believe this amendment to be, that people should be able to have guns, that they gave it an entire amendment just for that? And there's the whole amendment. It's just one sentence. So clearly they thought it was important. And yes, remember, they needed those people to have weapons in case the British came back, which they did in 1812. So there's also that reason as well. Okay, so the first paragraph here deals with one of the civil rights that was presented in the First Amendment, in this case, freedom of religion. And the second paragraph deals with a different amendment, the Second Amendment, which deals with ownership of guns. And here we have, lastly, the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution go to the states and the people. This amendment is also intended to ensure a balance of power among the states, and that the government does not infringe on the state's interests. Absolutely, that's what it's for. The federal government, the national government has one set of powers, the state governments have another set of powers. And here's the example. Here's a perfectly good example coming up. For instance, according to the reporter, the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, ending 50 years of federal abortion rights. Everyone can see that states will be able to make abortion regulations based on their state situation without fear of breaking the law. This is the power granted in the 10th Amendment. That's exactly what the Supreme Court ruled. Whether you are in favor of abortion or against abortion is not the issue here. The issue here is, what is the legal situation? And here the Supreme Court, 50 years ago, the Supreme Court ruled, yes, the Constitution gives people the right to abortion. And then 50 years later, a new Supreme Court said, oh no, the Constitution doesn't give people the right to an abortion. But even if the Constitution doesn't give nationally, everybody in the country, a federal right to abortion, nevertheless, each state can pass a law giving a right to abortion in each state. And of course, Congress, the federal Congress, could get together and pass a national law about abortion. They just haven't done it for political reasons, for whatever reason. But each of the states has done it and will continue to do it. So the states are taking this very seriously, whereas the federal government, at least Congress in the federal government, doesn't seem to want to pass a law regarding abortion. Very interesting. Anyway, so here's the third paragraph dealing with the 10th Amendment, which deals with some powers are for the federal government, some powers for the states. And this is an excellent example of what that amendment was all about. And then we have the conclusion. In sum, which means in summary, same idea, the Bill of Rights was an objection to the monarchy whose purpose was to guarantee human rights. That's the purpose of the Bill of Rights. As Obama's 2004 speech said, and again, here's the kind of thing that you can get from your research, right? If you read a little bit, if you do a little research, you find all kinds of references to the Bill of Rights. There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There's not a Black America or white America or Latino America or an Asian America. There is the United States of America. In other words, everybody is all united in the United States. The Bill of Rights protects all people in all states because America does not belong to any one person. It belongs to all Americans. This is a wonderful sentiment from President Obama, and a wonderful way to summarize the ideas behind the Bill of Rights in this particular essay. Very well done. And then, of course, we have the works cited. And you'll notice here the title is correct. It's works cited with the S, and it's not underlined, and it's not italicized, and it's not bolded, but it is centered. And then you'll notice here's the list of items. And you'll notice that the hanging indent format is used for each one, where the first part is first line is flush with the left-hand margin, and then the second line is indented like that. And you'll also notice that their items here are in alphabetical order. Maybe this little one here needs to be pushed over a little bit. That's all. So it's an excellent essay. Very well done, very well put together. And so hopefully reviewing that with you gave some people some ideas about how they might want to do their own essays. Just looking at the just looking at the chats there. All right, let's share the screen again and go back up to the top and just review, because a couple more people showed up in class. So here we are today, and what I've done is I've revised the schedule for the essays, because I'm repeating, because I only got 2 essays for everybody, so I need your essays. Here it is today. No class tomorrow. Work on your essays and get them into me. And I'm putting the due date now for Thursday. So I'd really like to have some essays on Thursday. If we can have them, that would be really good. Then I can turn them around, get them back to you so that you have the weekend to do any kind of editing that you need to do in order to get the second draft of that essay in. And then we're not going to move on till the third essay till not next week. I guess that's the week after, right? No, it's next week. It's a week from today. There we are. It's a week from today. We'll do the reading for the third essay. So please work on your essays. I gave you a little extra time. One of the things we'll do on Thursday is the librarian's going to come here to our virtual class and walk us through the library and show us how to do some research, give us some tips about how to use the library to familiarize all of you a little bit more with how to use the library, because you're really going to need that help. Okay, so let me just stop there and see if we have any questions. Anybody not sure what to do with essay number 2? Anybody need some advice for writing essay number 2? Or you're all just too busy to write the essay? Really, you got to get it done. This term end of this term comes really quickly, and I know you want credit for this. So, okay. So what advice can I give? Some advice I can give is the following. Think about, we went over the whole Bill of Rights. We went through all the different amendments, especially that First Amendment, which has all those civil rights, right? The right to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, all of those. And just what you should do in order to write this essay is think about what's important to you in your life. Now, that could be what's important to you in your life now, today, as you go to school every day, or it could be anytime, anything that's happened in your past. Some of you have lived in other places and other cultures, and maybe, for example, you could think about whether other countries have the same rights as you have in the United States. One way to write this essay is simply to say, you know, freedom of speech is something people enjoy in the United States, but not in China. Or freedom of religion is something people enjoy in the United States, but not all over the United States, or something like that. So think about what's important to you, what rights that we looked at that are in the Bill of Rights, which of those rights struck you as more important? Pick out the 3 most important ones that make sense to you. If I said to you, you have to pick 3 out of all the rights listed in the Bill of Rights. There's many things in there, right? Right to privacy, right not to be arrested, right to a jury trial, right? All kinds of rights in there. Which are the 3 most important to you? Which do you think are the 3 most important? So that'll help you. That's one way to think about this essay. Say to yourself, which are the 3 most important rights? Another way to think about it is to say, which of these, of all the rights listed in the Bill of Rights, which ones do I have in my examples in my mind about? Which ones do I have something to say about that might help to illustrate the idea? Like gun control or abortion or drug abuse or censorship or propaganda or any of these things that we encounter on a daily basis. And yes, somebody's asking a good question, which is somebody saying, well, can we talk about some of those rights that we don't think are useful? Absolutely. You can take a negative view. You can say the right to gun ownership, for example, the Second Amendment is a terrible thing. People shouldn't have guns. After all over Europe, in the European countries, nobody's allowed to have a gun. It's totally illegal. You can't, just having a firearm in England will get you thrown in jail. So yes, absolutely, you can, for example, yes. So absolutely, you can write against that. You might even think that people, I'm not saying anybody thinks this, but it's just an example. You might think that the idea that people can protest in the streets peacefully, not violently, is a bad thing, or you could think it's a good thing. So you could deal with that as well. We've had lots and lots of protesting going on in this country for many years, and certainly currently. So that's something to think about. Do you ask yourself, for each of those rights that you're considering, you could ask yourself the question, do I think this is a good right for everybody to have? Do I think it's good that everybody has the right to peaceful protest? Do I think it's good that everybody has the right to gun control, to own a gun? Do I think it's good that everybody has the right to say whatever they want, express them, freedom of speech, express themselves in any way they want to express themselves? Or do I think that's not a good thing? Do I think there's a bad side to that? Okay. Hopefully I've said enough to stimulate you to write the essay. Another thing you can do, by the way, I mentioned this last time, don't necessarily try to start writing your essay with your introduction. You can always start writing your essay with one of the body paragraphs and the one that interests you most, the one that you're thinking about most, and build your essay that way. So you write your first body paragraph, then maybe your second body paragraph, then maybe your third. And then once you've written those body paragraphs, then go back and see what you've talked about in your essay and then write your introduction. You can do it that way. Also remember that you do not have to take an historical view. The essay we looked at did take, it's certainly in the beginning, an historical view, at least the introduction had an historical point of view, but you don't need to do that. You can simply talk about what life is like in the United States today. If you're new to the United States, if you lived in another country and came here, you can certainly talk about differences between the culture that you left and the culture of the United States. Guns, for example, being one of them. And that's another way to think about how to write this essay. Anybody have any questions or ideas they want to share? Okay, I did post a sample essay for essay number 2 in Blackboard in the content folder for essay number 2. So you can look at another example right there. So please, and don't forget, if you can't do a complete essay, you really should be able to at this point. But if you can't, send in whatever first draft you have so we can get some, so I can give you some feedback and make some suggestions and help you to get to the end of the essay. Okay? Anybody? Anything you want to share? All right, people, get to work. You have time. We don't have class. You could sit down right now and start writing your essays. If we were in class, that's what I would do. I would have everybody sit there right now and start writing their essays. So go ahead and do that. And I'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Professor.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye-bye.
Bye.